Hello and welcome everyone to this another episode of Unlearning the Falsehoods. I guess this is the 21st episode, and today we are going to largely focus about what was the ideological background that was laid to enable and facilitate the partition of Bengal. Initially, the reasons given for partition of Bengal were economic. Okay, it was justified that there were economic reasons. There were economic reasons at the heart of the partition of Bengal, which was clearly not the case. That is going to be the central idea of this video. One more thing that I want you guys to focus about today is that we are going to focus in this video today is the caste system. Okay, caste is again a foreign word. This has been said multiple times, but still we use this word in our regular day-to-day parlance, thinking it is something that has originated organically in Bharat, which is clearly not the case. So that shows some or the other ignorance on our part. Okay, the natives of Bharat are not willing to give up the appendages of the past. Okay, something that has no organic origin in Bharat, and we still stick to it. All right. So yes, when both the colonizers, the British, the Christian and the Islamic, both the colonizers, when they were at the shores of Bharat, they saw that the people living here, okay, the people living here, they were broadly classified into four classes that we called as Varnas. Okay. So initially, the the Islamic colonizers, they did not pay much attention to this because they were converting left, right, and center to the sword. So it did not matter whether they were killing the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, or the Shudras. Quite frankly, they did not give a damn whom they were converting, as long as they were converting it by the sword. Okay, but the Christian colonizer, when they came here, they were slightly nuanced in their approach to convert. They discovered that if we now there were pre-existing fissures between all the four varnas. Okay, that is basic human nature. If somebody who is superior to you, you would definitely have that inherent impulse to go to the top. Okay. So yes, there were some internal struggles between all the four varnas. I'm not denying that, as so every other civilization or every other country has. There are internal struggles. Okay, so the British, the Christian colonizer, they realized it that the elites of the natives were the priests, the priestly class. Okay, now there was also some backdrop that the Christian colonizer had over here, because they were coming from their own Protestant reformation, wherein they realized that it was the priests who were an impediment to the full expression of the faith by the commoner. So they came over here, they applied the same template, and they realized that uh, if we divide the society, okay, if we widen and broaden these fissures that already exist between all the four varnas, and more specifically, the downtrodden, that today we like to call them as Dalits or OBCs or SCSTs. So if we manage to convince these people that it was indeed the priests who was keeping you, underdeveloped, they were keeping you away from the knowledge that could give you a flourishing career. So the British, they managed to convince the natives, and the natives who bought into this idea were largely from the downtrodden sections of the society, and hence this laid some groundwork for the conversion, okay, for the Christians. So this was some of the groundworks. Now, right from 47 onwards up until today, the scholarship, the mainstream scholarship of our country has told us, okay, and this has been the persisting narrative amongst the scholars, that it is the only native community, the non-converted natives, it is only them who have certain sections in their faith system. Okay, like we have so many castes. Again, using the word castes does not signify that I agree with it. It is something that has stuck in our day-to-day parlance. It should largely be varna, but fine. So it was the idea that we were sold this idea that it is only the non-converted natives who have this, so many stratifications, so many parts in the society, and we are sold this thing that Muslims, they do not have such stratifications in their societies. To them, I would point them towards one specific census that was undertaken by the British. Okay, that census was undertaken in the year of 1911. They undertook this census in Bengal. Okay, now we are moving towards the main agenda of this video, that is Bengal, and how was the groundwork laid down for the partition of Bengal. But in the year of 1911, this is post partition of Bengal, they did a census and they realized there were 80 different castes. There were 80 different castes in Muslim society alone. Okay, so I would let your better judgment ponder on this idea. Where did this narrative came from, that it is only the non-converted natives who have this caste system, and all the other monotheistic traditions, they do not have a caste system? Hence, to escape the rigid caste system, you should convert to the monotheistic tradition. This has been the superior narrative, and to this very day it exists. Okay, but it is completely flimsy, it's a farce, it's a well crafted lie. Okay, so yes, this did lay down some groundwork. It widened the fissures between all the four varnas. The people who were downtrodden, they were given this intellectual justification for them, convert, and hence you will get all the benefits. You will escape the rigid caste system and your life will flourish. To this very day, there are people who buy into this idea and convert. Yep. Next up, I really want to do, a quote. I'm going to quote somebody. There was an author named Abdul Karim. Okay, he was an assistant inspector in Bengal. Okay, and a fellow of Calcutta University. These are his words, not mine. Let's see what he has to say. Okay. The non-converted natives readily learnt Persian, and some of them even became teachers thereof. The English continued the use of Persian in courts so as to make as little change at first as possible. But in due course, Persian gave way to the Indian vernaculars and English as the court languages of British India. Okay, there is this wide acceptance among people on the basis of scientific research that Charles Darwin, okay, he came up with this idea of survival of the fittest. Now, how do you describe who will be the fittest? Okay, the person or the creature that is readily adaptable. Somebody who is extremely adaptable is somebody who would survive, and that is something inherent in the character of the natives of Bharat. Okay, we as a race are inherently adaptable. All right, this has been very much this could be very much seen in our acceptance of English language without any filters. Okay, we have adopted the mannerisms, we have adopted the language of the English without any filters. We have taken it all, we have absorbed it, and to this very day we keep pushing forth this agenda. So yes, it is regularly discussed in on social media and in public discourse how difficult it is to express your masculine side. All right, it is really difficult to be masculine, especially if you belong to neither of the monotheistic traditions, because you will be cancelled, you will be castigated from all the social media platforms if you are a polytheist, if you are a pagan. But if you belong to any of the monotheistic traditions, it is really easy for you to flourish on social media. But more about that in the future videos of this channel. Right now we are going to focus on education. Right, in the previous video we have discussed this at length, so a brief recap. All right, Now the natives, the non-converted natives, they had readily adopted this language. Okay, it is inherent in the character of the natives of Bharat that we are by nature adaptive. We will adapt to everything that comes, and if there is something that something from the foreigners who is worthy of you know accommodating in our that adaptive nature, we would do that. So yes, the natives, they started learning English, they started learning Persians, and by virtue of their adaptability, they were able to occupy higher positions in the service of the empires, in the service of the kings, in the service of the Islamic rulers as well. Okay. Now, this really establishes a relationship between language, education, and consciousness. It really matters in which language you think because every language has an inherent character. Okay, try it. If you were to criticize the British in their own language, it would be counterintuitive. All right, the thoughts that come in English, they are inherently the words, the thoughts, their sentences, they will make it easier for you to praise the British, the praise the Western world. But if you had to criticize them in their own language, it would be counterintuitive. All right, so hence language plays a very important role, and this is decades of education that the natives they adopted without any filter. All right, now we have also spoken about in why was this a matter of worry for the British, that the natives had readily adapted to their language, their mannerisms, they had learned their ways, they had learned how to think like them. Now this posed a challenge. Okay, many of the English authorities, many of the lords, many of the lords who were posted over here, they have said it. It's very well documented in many records that the purpose of English language education of the natives was that we need a race of people amongst the natives, amongst the non-converted natives, who would only be brown in appearance, but in their mannerisms, in their thinking, in their thoughts, they wanted them to be English. Okay, but like I said, there is this deep down inherent nationalism in us that would just refuse to die away. So even after being exposed to English language literature, English language education without any filters, okay, now the natives had occupied positions in the employment of the British. Now this raised some alarms because obviously we have discussed this in the previous videos that the British, they had foreseen, they had seen in their heads that one day, if not today, let's say 50 years, 100 years down the line, we will have to leave this country because such a mass of people, okay, you cannot rule them forever. All obviously they were aiming to rule us forever, but they foresaw it somewhere that no, we cannot do this, it's not possible. So this raised some alarms that how are these natives occupying so much position? It would be really difficult to keep them in check. So this was number one. Okay, so they were educating, they were adopting our ways. We need to we need to have something, we need to have a political ally to keep this political resurgence of the non-converted natives in check so we can prolong our rule over this colony. Okay, so that is where the Muslims come in. Okay, we have discussed this sufficiently in the previous videos that since both of them belong to this Abrahamic origin, both of them were the people of the book, so the British had more affinity towards Muslim when it came to trust, when it came to when it came down to having a trusted ally. They did not trust the non-converted natives, rather they trusted the converted natives, that were the Muslims. Okay, so hence there came about this alliance of mutual benefit between the British and the Muslims. Okay, how did Bengal come into picture? If you have read some books, not just the history textbooks, but if you have explored some other sources for history, if at all you were interested about the history of this land, you might have explored some other sources. So when you do that, you will come across this fact that the overwhelming majority of the revolutionaries, Okay, revolutionaries were the people who did not buy into this idea of pacifism, meaning demanding independence and Swaraj through constitutional means. They were of the opinion that you will have to snatch self rule from the British. They will not just readily serve it to you on a silver platter through constitutional means. Okay, so the overwhelming majority of those revolutionaries were from Bengal. So there was this resurgence of native nationalism from the area that today combines both Bangladesh and West Bengal. But there was this resurgence of native nationalism from Bengal, and the overwhelming revolutionaries were from Bengal. Now, I would really like to clarify over here, nationalism in our country gets a bad rep. It is said that it is not good to be a nationalist. Okay, now this comes from the idea of nationalism of the monotheistic tradition. Okay, when the Christians came over here, they had come over here after their reformation, when they were given a specific freedom to practice their own Christian denomination. That gave rise to getting more and more converts to their faith. That gave rise to colonization. Okay, so for them, nationalism is a bad thing, because nationalism exhorts you to go to other countries, butcher people, torture them, convert them, exploit their resources. For them, this is nationalism. Okay, so usually nationalism in the sense of Bharat is, is misplaced, because when in our country, when you say nationalism, people, the so-called modern people, they will mistake it for the nationalism of the monotheistic kind. That is clearly not the case. So there were nationalists approach, nationalist thoughts, revolutionaries were coming out of Bengal. The British realized this, that we need to nip this in the bud. Okay, we need to solve this problem of revolutionaries and nationalism that was coming out of Bengal. So hence they realized that we need to divide this province. Now to give you a context, modern day, current day Bangladesh, West Bengal and Assam, and larger parts of Tripura and Mizoram. Okay, those are the parts that made the Bengal presidency in those times, in the British era times. Okay, so after doing a census, they realized that the eastern Bengal has a Muslim majority, and the western part of Bengal has has the majority of the non-converted natives. Okay, so it was, I guess, Curzon. We like to call him as Lord Curzon, but yeah, Curzon was the person. Obviously, he was standing on the shoulders of giants, but he realized that there is this significant political maneuver that he could do in this part of Bharat. That is, if he partitions the eastern Bengal from the western Bengal, then in the eastern Bengal, the Muslims will be in majority, and in the western Bengal, the non-converted natives would be in the majority. Okay. So he did that, and this set the precedent for, Muslim consciousness, political separatism, as in politically Muslims were different from the non-converted natives. This set the precedence that once there has been a partition based on religious lines. Okay, Bengal, if you like it or not, Bengal was partitioned on religious lines. Okay, there were other justifications given by Curzon that Bengal is a very large administrative province, and it is not convenient to administer Bengal just from one base, that is Calcutta. So yes, Bengal was divided on religious lines, and post-partition there were justifications given based on economic lines. Again, this is a Marxist template. Okay, Marxists, ideologues, Marxist scholars and historians, they always give the fallback on this justification of economic, and economic reasons for Mopla riots, for exodus of the priests from Kashmir. All right, every damn thing happens due to economic inequality. This is a tried and tested Marxist template. If you want to justify something, insert an economic factor, and people will buy into it. Okay, the same thing was done post-partition by Curzon and his associates. Okay, so that was like crystallizing this thing of of the idea that partition happened, and usually our history textbooks have taught us that it was the British who, adopted this policy of divide and rule. All right. Yes, up to a certain degree, I would agree that British adopted the policy of divide and rule, but there was significant difference. Okay, it's not like overnight suddenly the Muslims became conscious about them being different from the non-converted natives. All right, such fissures existed from the time of the Mughal time period and the British time period. Okay, so such divisions in the society had already existed. It was not the British who came over here and invented these fissures, they already existed. If at all, British were cunning and smart enough to take advantage of it, to capitalize on it. Okay, so yes, partition of Bengal, set a precedent, set a political precedent, and this was the groundwork. All right. Now here we are going to focus on some of the words of a civil servant during the time. That person was named Henry Cotton. Okay, Henry Cotton writes this: the object of the measure, the partition of Bengal. The object of the measure was to shatter the unity and to disintegrate the feelings of solidarity which are established in the province. It was no administrative reason that lay to the root of this scheme. It was part and parcel of Lord Curzon's policy to enfeeble the growing power and to destroy the political tendencies of a patriotic spirit. Like I said, it is beyond the scope of this video to, cover each and every aspect of our history that was, distorted and taught to us in a false way. Okay, all I can do through this series is to point you in the right direction, to explore other resources, do your own research. And one of that thing is the partition of Bengal was clearly to dampen, to extinguish the nationalist and the patriotic spirit that was on the rise in the Bengal presidency. Okay, and the fact that corroborates this is the overwhelming majority of revolutionaries were from Bengal presidency. So it was a cunning move from the British to form a mutual alliance with the Muslims and partition Bengal to, somehow dampen that spirit of nationalism. And when I say of nationalism, it is different from the nationalism of the monotheistic people. Okay. Now, one more factor before we end this video is we have been sold this idea of Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb. Okay, it is some wishful and make believe idea of syncretic culture between the converted natives and the non-converted natives. That is Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb. Okay, so if indeed it existed, let's assume for the sake of this video and sake of argument that there indeed was something called Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb. Okay, why don't we see Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb when Bengal was partitioned? Initially, there were some movements from the converted natives of Bengal that they opposed partition of Bengal, but when they realized that there was some advantage of merging or allying with the British to keep in check the native resurgence, because they were also motivated by this fear that when the British leaves, who exactly is going to rule over this country? Okay, so they also had their own self-interests, and hence, if at all there was some opposition to the partition of Bengal from the converted natives, it died down gradually. Okay, so that's about it for this video. More in the upcoming episodes of this series. Usually our history would seem like joining a lot of pieces of puzzle. It's like solving a jigsaw puzzle. Initially it might not individually these points might not make sense to you, but when the entire puzzle comes together and you see the larger picture, everything will start making sense. All right, so that's it for this video. More in the upcoming parts of the series, that is unlearning the falsehoods. Thank you for watching.